All right, our next speaker, as we move along, is Dr. Samara Sterling. She serves as the research director for the Peanut Institute and has expertise in the use of plant-based nutrition for the prevention and treatment of chronic diseases. In her role, she manages the research funded by the Peanut Institute and industry partners and develops research aimed at surrounding peanut nutrition research. Samara?
Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure for me to hear the presentations that have preceded mine. And Dr. Rivera talked about the health benefits of so many foods. And as he was talking, I just wanted to remind us that we do have health benefits in peanuts as well. The antioxidant capacity that we see in carrots, that we see in pecans. I think these are amazing studies that Dr. Rivera brought out, as well as some of the other studies. And I think, you know, just in the way that he explained this, there are opportunities for us as an industry as well. We do have studies that are talking about just how peanuts help to protect against type 2 diabetes, as well as other chronic diseases such as certain types of cancer. This study here is showing the resveratrol in peanuts being able to enhance the success of radiation therapy when it comes on to actually killing prostate cancer cells. And so thank you so much for bringing that out. I just wanted to point that out for us and remind us that we do have the Peanut Institute, and we do work on the health benefits of peanut consumption, as well as that task of bringing it to the consumer's forefront so that we can have this message there, the superfood message that we really do have in our product. And as I transition, I want to talk about this idea of, will we run out of food? So we're talking about the health benefits of food, right? But will we run out of food in the future? Just a year ago, we would not have imagined that we would be in a pandemic that is affecting everyone across the globe, where people are starting to ask these questions about their food supply. And there are other situations across the globe that cause us to think about this question, including global conflicts, famines, and a growing population. The main points that I want to bring out in this presentation is that we have a nutritious product that is also affordable and sustainable. It has diverse applications. The challenge for us, though, as an industry over the next 20, 30 years is to be able to poise ourselves with the ability to offer that product that'll be able to meet the needs of a growing population. But we have some opportunities here to consider nutritional breeding as well as expanding our innovation. This is a picture of Dr. Walt Willett from Harvard University, and the Peanut Institute has worked very closely with Harvard University over the years, looking at the health benefits of peanuts. And Dr. Walt Willett led a team of over 30 scientists across the world. Last year, they came out with a report called the Eat Lancet Report that talked about what will nutrition look like in the next 30 years, or what should nutrition look like. And the main argument of this paper is that if we are going to be able to feed the world's estimated 10 billion people population by the year 2050, as well as continuing sustainability, our diets are going to have to drastically change. And based on this report, there have already been policy changes that are starting to be implemented to sort of shift our dietary patterns towards the recommendations that are being made here. One of the main recommendations for our industry is that the consumption of both nuts and legumes will have to double by the year 2050 to meet this goal. And it's called the Planetary diet. Now, if you look at this diet here, what you'll see is that half of the plate is comprised of raw fruits and vegetables, but I want you to take note of this light green area here, which is your plant-based protein. Dr. Stover talked about the increased importance of plant-based protein, and we do see this come out in the Eat Lancet report. because we are now being asked through policies and through science to increase our intake of plant-based proteins and to decrease our intake of animal source proteins. Now, this does not mean that we should eliminate animal proteins. It does not advocate eliminating any one food, but rather eating them in the right proportions to support human and environmental health. And it is estimated that if we can implement this shift towards this planetary diet, we can actually save 11 million lives each year just by this dietary shift. If you look at this chart here, the main thing that I want to bring out is the yellow bar shows where we are currently in terms of nut production, and where we'll need to be is the blue line and the green line that more so deals with the amount of waste that we have. But this is where we'll have to be if we're going to meet that increased demand. So as you can see, we'll have to significantly increase that demand. When we compare that to other legumes, such as dried beans, lentils, peas, and soy, our production as an industry will have to be almost twice as much as those industries. And one of the reasons for this is because we're already seeing strategies being implemented across some of the legume industries to implement a nutrition strategy. Now, I was privileged to attend the American Society for Nutrition conference in 2019. I attend that conference every year. And at this particular conference, the American Pulses Association was actually detailing their nutrition strategy for the next 20 years. It almost felt like I should have been banned from that meeting, but it was awesome for me to be there because I think that there are a lot of applications that we can take into our industry as well. One of the main points that was made, and you're seeing an actual slide from the meeting here in blue, but one of the main points that was made is that we do have a growing global nutritional crisis. Malnutrition affects 1 in 3 persons across the globe. And in the next 20 years, the 3 forms of malnutrition will be overweight and obesity, stunted growth, as well as hidden hunger. Now, I think Dr. Rivera as well as Dr. Stover talked about the obesity crisis that we have going on. And it's interesting because when we think about malnutrition, we tend to think about the lack of food. But malnutrition really is the lack of proper nutrition, and it can come in one of a few different ways. Number one, the lack of adequate food, or the lack of proper foods or proper nutrients. And the kinds of malnutrition that we see specifically in developed countries or in the Western world is the form of malnutrition having to do with overweight and obesity that we are seeing increase, as well as hidden hunger. So in other words, just because you're eating a lot of food doesn't mean you're getting the nutrients that you actually need. So over the next 20, 30 years, we're going to start to see this become more and more important in terms of what we need as a population. The American Pulses Association has this nutrition strategy to look more closely into nutritional breeding as their answer. And specifically in the area of biofortification, conventional breeding methods. The idea here is to improve yields with nutritional quality. So rather than simply thinking about the quantity of foods that we are producing, we also want to think about the quality of foods that we're producing. And to be honest, this can be an entire paradigm shift within agricultural industry, but it's something that is very necessary. They also have nutrition targets within the industry. And as you can see, the nutrition targets are highlighted for lentils, field peas, and chickpeas. Some of the nutrition targets include increasing prebiotics. Prebiotics are basically substances that increase the beneficial bacteria within your gut. And we're finding that your gut microbiome and the bacteria within your gut can help to prevent many different chronic diseases that we have today. They're also looking at increasing protein, selenium, iron, zinc, as well as increasing iron bioavailability. I just wanted to show a few examples of across agricultural industries where this biofortification is already happening, and it has been happening for quite a few years. Brazil nuts, for example, this was a study in 2018 where the methionine levels in Brazil nuts were enhanced by over 2 times through that biofortification. The reason this is important for us is because methionine is an amino acid that we consider to be an essential amino acid, meaning that we need to consume it each day. And peanuts happen to be a little bit lower in methionine. And so here we see that for a nut, Brazil nut, this was able to be increased through biofortification. This is another study on iron that was published earlier this year that showed an improvement in iron status as well as physical performance in women from a red pea variety that was biofortified to increase iron bioavailability. And then on the bottom left here, you'll see vitamin A fortified cassava. The yellow one is the one that's being fortified with vitamin A, and then zinc fortified rice. So for us as a peanut industry, the main challenge for us is going to be meeting the anticipated growth in demand while prioritizing nutritional targets that will become important in the future. So while we're thinking about yield, and while we're thinking about disease resistance, and while we're thinking about aflatoxin, we have to make sure that we do not forget the nutrition of peanuts. I think the first step in this is number one, maintaining our current nutrient values. So peanuts are a good or excellent source of at least 8 different nutrients. I haven't listed all of them here. Fiber is another one that we're a good source in. And being good and great and excellent sources in these nutrients really helps us, especially as a peanut institute, as well as just the industry as a whole, be able to communicate that consumer messaging, because we can literally take these nutrients and point to their effects in the body, such as niacin for heart disease, as well as vitamin E, or even Alzheimer's disease with some of the nutrients that we have here. The second step, though, taking it a little bit further, is that I think that we need to think about identifying potential breeding targets. So the nutrients that I've listed here are ones that are based on the current scientific literature that we have in terms of some of the nutritional needs that we're going to be having in the future, as well as some of the ones that we have now. So protein, for example, here's where we are, about 24 grams of protein per 100 grams of peanuts. Now, if we were to do a potential target of 35 to 40 grams, the idea here, as I've listed in italics, would be really to think about increasing the essential amino acids or the limiting amino acids that we have in peanuts. And those tend to be either lysine, threonine, or methionine. These are the amino acids that we find from the literature tend to be limiting. So we can think about ways to increase those amino acids. Fiber is another one that definitely helps with our health and wellness messaging, particularly in the area of heart disease. Heart disease is the #1 killer among men and women in the United States, as well as globally. If we think about fiber, specifically, we can start thinking about, are there ways to increase the soluble fiber content of peanuts? Because this one is specifically important for heart disease. I put zinc here, not just for the idea of reducing stunted growth, as we see maybe in developing countries, but with the pandemic upon us, as we're looking for immune-rich foods, you might have heard a lot of people talking about zinc. And I think as our consumer awareness increases around communicable diseases, respiratory infections, nutrients like this are going to be really important, because zinc is one of our main immune-building nutrients. Folate is going to continue to be important for pregnant women, as well as vitamin A, specifically beta carotene. But I do think, as we think about vitamin A, we might want to think through that one just a little bit more from a consumer perspective, just because, as you saw from the example of the cassava, vitamin A tends to leave sort of an orange or yellowish hue to the product. So we might want to think about whether or not there are ways to do that in a way that will not decrease consumer acceptability. And then there are quite a few others here that I've listed as secondary targets that we could think about, such as selenium, omega-3, iron, and resveratrol. Some of the questions that we'll need to consider as we look at nutritional breeding. So #1, from a genomics perspective, if we were to increase the essential amino acids in peanuts, how will that affect flavor? Will it decrease the flavor acceptability across our consumer base? Also, soil conditions. We know selenium, for example, that's one that's heavily dependent on the soil. So could we do this consistently in different regions? Testing methods is another thing we'll need to consider. Which methods are most appropriate for certain nutrients to adequately measure them, such as fiber or folate. And then talking about increasing the antioxidant capacity as well as the prebiotics within peanuts. And then can we increase nutrient bioavailability? Would we even want to think about that? I think that's another can of worms to think about nutrient bioavailability for reasons that I won't mention here, but I think that's another one that we could think about. So the opportunity that we do have as an industry is really to create a centralized database that tracks our nutrient levels in cultivars and market types over time. We want to make sure that we develop industry nutrition standards that should be met. So the moment that there's a new cultivar, as we are doing breeding, we want to look at the nutrient levels and just make sure that those standards are there to make sure that we're not falling in any area, to make sure that we are maintaining those standards, as well as having unified standards for testing. And then as I wrap up, I just want to mention that another area of opportunity for us as an industry in the future is to really think about expanding our innovation, specifically in the area of plant-based proteins. And there are a few ways that we can think about doing this. Number one, you might have heard about the Blenditarian movement. So this is an idea where you basically combine a food item. In this case, it's chopped mushrooms with ground meat, and it's done for both flavor and nutrition as well as sustainability. And it yields an interesting product, one that is very much acceptable. Consumers tend to be satisfied by it. I know it might seem a bit out the box to think about how peanuts would even be able to replace chopped mushrooms in a situation like this, but there are ideas behind this. One idea is to use boiled peanuts, because boiled peanuts are really, you can think about them as the pea in the peanut. It takes the peanut out of the shell, really. So if we had a way in which we can give boiled peanuts to consumers, not usually what we have is that they're unshelled when consumers get them. But if we had boiled peanuts, for example, in a can that's shelled, then there are a variety of applications that consumers can use them for, such as the recipes that you're seeing here, and even through a blended product. The other area in plant-based nutrition is plant-based meat analogs. You've seen the rise in popularity of foods like the Impossible Burger and the Beyond Burger. In fact, Nestle came out with a study last year that showed that 44% of consumers identify themselves as flexitarians. What that means is that you're not vegetarian, you're not vegan, you're not exclusively plant-based, but you may have a meatless Monday every once in a while, and consumers are starting to increase their reliance on plant-based proteins. So as you can see for the Beyond Burger, the main ingredient here is pea protein. You're talking about yellow peas. As you can see here, it's really ground up into a powder just like this, and it is incorporated into this burger that has become so popular. Are there ways in which we as an industry can get into an area like this? Well, this is a new product that's called the nut meat. I haven't tried it yet. I have been delaying my trying of it, but I intend to try it within the next month or so. And this is a similar product, similar concept to the Beyond Burger, but as you can see from the ingredient list, one of the main ingredients in this is peanuts. So I think that there are opportunities for us to think about peanuts sort of outside the realm in which we are accustomed to thinking about them. And just as an idea here, this is a patent that I saw that I think is very interesting, because I'm familiar with these types of products, the textured vegetable protein, if you've ever heard of that. It's usually made from soy, but it's a similar concept, just like how I showed you with the pea protein ground into the flour. Here you have the peanut powder, so peanuts ground into a flour and being made into this product. If you can see here in figure 2B, this shows the texture of the product that is similar to a meat substance or a meat analog. And as you can see, it has various applications, such as within a blend or as a meat alternative. So there are quite a few opportunities there. And as I wrap up, I'll just say, the global diet is changing. So yes, consumers love peanuts in the pack. Consumers love peanut butter. We love boiled peanuts. And I think that there are ways in which we can stay ahead of the nutrition trends, stay ahead of the dietary and eating trends. Number one, by maintaining our current nutrient levels, identifying potential nutrient targets, having a centralized database, and expanding our innovation. I think that success is definitely possible in this area, but it requires a united effort, and it can be done. Thank you so much for this time. And if there are any questions, I can take a few now.
Thank you, Samara. There are a few questions here. Wow, there's a lot of questions. Let's try this one. Will biofortification result to a highly segregated supply chain? And if so, should we be thinking on implementing strategies for release, production, and supply chain management of those peanuts?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good question. And I think that there is that potential. However, I think there are quite a few products that have varied uses, and we can think of it like that. So not necessarily thinking of it as a segregated supply chain, but I think that just thinking of it in terms of the implementation strategies that we use for release, we can say, for example, a vitamin A fortified peanut, for example, can have a different kind of use than, say, a folate enhanced peanut. So a folate enhanced peanut would be most appropriate for women in pregnancy. And we see this quite a bit within the clinical setting. We have already fortified products with folate for pregnant women, and we have products that are fortified with vitamin A for certain types of malnutrition. So there's a way that we can do this in a way that will still unify the industry, just having various segments in which those products can be used.
Sorry about that. Great answers. There's a few more questions, but and we'll try and get to those at the end, if that's all right. We're going to go ahead and move on. Thank you very much, Samara. Great presentation. Yes. All right, so you have two questions here. One is, how do we ensure that consumers get information on the nutritional benefits of peanuts?
I think that's an ongoing discussion, and something that we at the Peanut Institute have been working really hard on. I would like to just invite anyone here, if you haven't been to our website, please check our website out, www.peanutinstitute.com. As I mentioned before, this is really an industry-wide effort. We cannot do it alone, but what we do is we engage social media influencers. So basically folks, as Patrick was talking about earlier, who have influence within their particular communities, whether they are just popular Instagrammers who do cooking videos, or dietitians in clinics, etc. And we engage them to promote the health benefits of peanuts. So whenever we have research studies that come out, you'll see us work with influencers all across our social media platforms. If you check out our website, we also have infographics, as well as an entire research library that shows the health benefits of peanuts. We do videos, et cetera, et cetera. There's so much content that we have at the Peanut Institute for the purpose of the industry. So if you have consumers, you can literally just go on our website, put your logo on there, and share all that message across your social media channels as well. So I think it's an industry-wide effort, and we certainly are trying really hard to do our part with that.
Outstanding answer. And I think that everybody, could you say that the website one more time, please? www.peanutinstitute.com. I'll put it in the chat right now. Perfect. And that's one part that I was going to tell everybody, all the attendees, if you'll check your chat, Emmy has just posted the link to the APRES site, and Samara is going to be posting the website for the Peanut Institute. So you should be able to click on those links directly and go to those sites.